They told you forgiveness is strength, that letting go is noble, that you must be the bigger person. But they never told you who that benefits. They never told you what it costs. They never told you that every time you forgive without consequence, you train the world to destroy you again. This is not a message of hate. It's a message of clarity. Forgiveness, as they sell it, is not healing. It's obedience in disguise. Let's strip away the illusion. Let's dissect the myth of forgiveness, piece by piece, and expose it for what it truly is. A system of psychological control designed to weaken you, not strengthen. Niccolo Machiavelli never glorified mercy. He didn't romanticize forgiveness. To him, power was not about moral superiority. It was about strategy, survival, and supremacy. So why do they preach forgiveness? Because it makes you harmless, because it makes you forgettable, because it turns warriors into sheep, and sheep are easy to lead to slaughter. You've been told, forgive and forget. But let me ask you, who benefits when you forget? Not you. You gain nothing by discarding the lessons burned into your skin. You gain nothing by pretending the knife in your back never existed. The betrayer benefits. The liar benefits. The one who wounded you walks away clean while you bleed in silence and call it growth. But what if, instead of forgiving, you remembered? Truly remembered. Not with bitterness, but with purpose. Not to hold a grudge, but to build a map. A map of patterns, of lies, of psychological weak spots. What if memory was not pain, but power? You see, forgiveness tells the enemy, you can harm me without cost. And in this world, the cost is everything. The moment you signal that there is no price for betrayal, you invite it again and again and again. Because weakness, especially the virtuous kind, is blood in the water, and the wolves can smell it. Let's stop pretending. Forgiveness is not strength. It is surrender, dressed in virtue. It is giving away your leverage, your boundaries, your clarity, all for the comfort of others. They call it healing. But real healing is not pretending the past didn't happen. It's building the kind of mind that can't be wounded that way again. The kind of mind that remembers. The kind of mind that calculates. The kind of mind that walks through fire and comes out forged, not scorched. Do you think the kings who built empires were merciful? Do you think the generals who conquered nations forgave every betrayal? Number they documented. They learned. They adapted. And when the time was right, they acted, strategically, not with emotion, not with rage, but with execution-level clarity, because they knew what the masses do not. Forgiveness without memory is suicide. You've been gaslit into mercy, taught that letting go makes you righteous. But what it really does is strip you of your edge. It tells your enemies, I will not fight back. It tells the manipulators, I am available for another round. And they will test that. They will test you again and again until you break. Not because they're evil, but because you trained them to believe you won't retaliate. This is what Machiavelli understood. A ruler who forgets history invites invasion. A prince who forgives betrayal without punishment teaches disloyalty. And a man who discards his pain for the illusion of peace will find only repeated war. So you must remember, not to attack, but to govern yourself, your life, your empire, with cold clarity. This is not a call to rage, this is a call to intelligence. Let others forgive freely. Let them rot in their own repetition. But you must become deliberate. You must become surgical. Forgive only when it strengthens your position. Otherwise, write their name in your ledger, record the offense, study the behavior, and wait. Wait in silence. Because true power doesn't punish immediately. It remembers, it watches, it sharpens. And when the moment is right, it acts with a precision so devastating that silence itself becomes a weapon. This is the foundation. Not hatred, not drama, but remembrance. Because in this world, the one who remembers wins. Pain is not the enemy. Betrayal is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is the enemy. Because when you forget, you invite repetition. When you forgive blindly, you broadcast weakness. But when you remember, truly, tactically remember, you evolve. This part is about weaponizing memory, not to become cruel, but to become untouchable. Every betrayal carries a blueprint, every lie they told you, every smile that hid a knife, every "I didn't mean to" that came after the damage was done. These are not just wounds. They are coordinates, clues, psychological fingerprints. The weak try to forget these things to move on, but the strong, they document, they analyze, they dissect. Because true strength lies not in forgiveness, but in information. Think of your memory as a vault, not filled with grudges, but with case files, each labeled, each dated, each studied. What did they do? How did they do it? What blind spot did I reveal that allowed it? You don't do this to stay angry. You do it to evolve past ever needing anger again. This is not bitterness. It is intelligence. Write it all down. Not on social media, not in therapy circles begging for validation. Write it for you. Who hurt me? What mask were they wearing? What did I ignore? Then go deeper. Why did I allow it? What did they sense in me that made them confident I wouldn't respond? When you ask these questions, you stop being a victim, and you start becoming a commander. A weak man reacts. A powerful man records. He files away offenses like ammunition, not for revenge, but for strategy. Let me be clear. You don't need to destroy the people who crossed you. You need to outgrow them so completely they suffocate in your absence. That is power. That is vengeance with discipline. There is no greater fear you can instill in your enemies than the realization that you remember, but you no longer engage. You've built your fortress. Your emotions no longer burst. They calculate, they assess, they wait. And when you strike, if you strike, it is not from rage. It is from total understanding. Your memory must be trained like a military unit, structured, focused, precise. If you allow it to become chaotic, emotional, or reactive, you fall into weakness. But if you structure your memory, if you let it guide your pattern recognition, your boundaries, your emotional thresholds, then you become a man no one dares to test twice. Because your silence is not ignorance, it's preparation. Forgiveness is an act, but memory is a system. And when you turn betrayal into data, you take back every ounce of power they stole. You don't need to scream. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You simply need to remember and move accordingly. They'll call you cold. They'll call you bitter. They'll call you cruel. Let them. Because those words, bitter, cold, unforgiving, are the language of the guilty. Those are the desperate stabs of people who are no longer allowed access. And nothing disturbs a manipulator more than a target who simply stopped playing the game. You see, there are two kinds of people in this world. Those who suffer betrayal and call it life, and those who suffer betrayal and build empires from it. Your pain is not your prison. It is your blueprint, but only if you remember it, and only if you study it. Because once you do, once you map the tactics used against you, you become immune to them. Memory is not for vengeance. It's for prevention. You don't chase people who wronged you. You don't beg them for change. You outgrow them so savagely that even mentioning your name feels like a mistake. And here's the twist. You don't even have to hate them, because when your memory is sharp enough, you don't need hatred. You have data, you have clarity, you have power. So from this moment forward, don't call it holding a grudge. Call it what it is, a strategy manual, a living document of boundaries, a record of war, not for vengeance, but for vision. You are not bitter. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are simply a man who remembers. And in a world of people who forget, that makes you lethal. You don't need to scream. You don't need to prove anything. You need to track everything, every offense, every deviation, every red flag that came dressed as a compliment. This is not paranoia. This is not revenge. This is the ledger mindset, a system of cold, clinical, strategic memory. Because power belongs not to the loudest, but to the most observant. The ledger mindset begins with a shift in identity. You are no longer the man who feels wronged. You are now the man who observes patterns. Because betrayal is rarely spontaneous. It is rehearsed, softened, delivered through harmless mistakes and slips of the tongue. And the fool forgives, but the strategist logs. Let's be very clear. You're not tracking to punish. You're tracking to prevent. This is the difference between emotion and control. Most people forgive because they're overwhelmed. They want to feel clean again. They want to feel peaceful. So they rush to forgiveness the way a man drowning rushes to air. But what happens? They get pulled right back into the same waters because they didn't learn, because they didn't record. The ledger mindset asks you to do what most people can't. Detach, observe, record, maintain silence. Think of it like this. If someone lies to you once, that's a data point. If they lie again, that's a pattern. If they laugh at your pain, disrespect your boundaries, break their word, show no accountability, you don't argue, you don't explain, you write it down, mentally or literally. You place it in the ledger. You document behavior, not just words, because actions never lie. You don't need closure from these people. You don't need apologies. You need only clarity. You are not here to rehabilitate them. You are here to govern yourself. This is the true power of the ledger. It removes your emotions from the equation and replaces them with discipline. Let them betray you once. Let them show you who they are. But do not reward it with softness. Do not respond with indulgence. Respond with distance. Your job is not to teach them how to treat you. Your job is to recognize how they naturally treat you when there's nothing to gain. That is the real test. Now let me warn you. Once you begin to keep the ledger, people will start to feel uneasy around you. They will sense the shift. Because when you stop reacting, when you stop playing the please love me game, when you don't explode, don't explain, don't engage, they know they've lost control. Your calm becomes a mirror they cannot look into. You must become the kind of man whose silence terrifies people, not because you are cruel, but because your composure says, I saw what you did. I documented it. I made peace with it, and I have adjusted accordingly. That is all. No warning, no discussion, no access. That's how kings rule, not through punishment, but through consequence. Punishment is loud, emotional, unstable, but consequence is predictable. It is mathematical. It is silent. You don't need to cut people off with rage. You just stop giving them a seat at your table. And let's say this plainly. You will lose people. Good. That's the point. Because the longer you track betrayal, the less you tolerate it. And eventually, your life becomes a sanctuary for excellence only. No leeches, no liars, No guilt manipulators, no almost loyalty, just you and the people who never needed forgiveness because they never crossed you. That is the reward of the ledger. Not revenge, not justice, but peace through discipline. You no longer need to confront betrayal. You simply exclude it. You no longer need to chase loyalty. You simply notice who already practices it. This is how kings build kingdoms that last. This is how generals win wars without firing a single shot. This is how you rise, not as an emotional man desperate for harmony, but as a composed force no one dares to test twice. So build your ledger. Track every offense, not to seek revenge, but to govern your world. You're not here to be liked. You're not here to be soft. You're here to be sovereign, and sovereign men remember everything, quietly, privately, permanently. You've been conditioned to think that being cold is cruel, that showing indifference is a flaw in your character, that silence means you're heartless, that stillness means you don't care. But let me tell you the truth, that no one dares to say, indifference is not weakness, it is war. True Machiavellian power lies not in what you say, but in what you don't. Not in how you feel, but in what you withhold. Coldness is not a lack of emotion. It is the total control of it. When you respond with heat, when you rage, scream, plead, or cry, you feed your enemy. You give them what they came for, a reaction. But when you remain still, when you look them in the eye and feel nothing, when you ghost them without explanation, when you erase them from your world without a word, that silence, that cold, merciless silence, it breaks them. Strategic coldness is a psychological weapon. It's not about being heartless. It's about being untouchable. Because the truth is, the person who can control their emotional output controls the room. You don't win power by being the loudest. You win by being unreadable, by being unpredictable, by making your presence a question they can't answer. You want to forgive them? Fine. But forgive in silence. Forgive with absence. Forgive with cold detachment that leaves them haunted, not by your words, but by your void. Don't give them closure. Don't give them the luxury of understanding what they did to you. Make them wonder. Make them chase ghosts. Make them ask questions that echo forever in their own heads. Indifference is more terrifying than anger. A person who yells still cares. A person who cries is still attached. But a person who no longer reacts, that person is free. And to someone who once had power over you, your freedom is unbearable. Your silence is their punishment. Your absence is your vengeance. So how do you master strategic coldness? Detach from expectation. Stop expecting apologies, explanations, or changes. Expect nothing. That is power. Disengage emotionally. When they try to bait you with guilt, tears, or rage, observe, don't absorb. Delay your response. Never react instantly. Let time kill emotion. Then speak, or better, stay silent. Be rare. Make your presence something people earn, not something they consume. Disappear when disrespected, not as a tactic, but as a rule. If they cross the line once, make that the last time. Let the world believe you're heartless. Let them call you cold. What they call cold is simply a heart that burned too long, too bright, and decided to protect itself. You don't owe your warmth to people who threw you into the fire. Forgiveness, if it comes, should be internal. You owe closure only to yourself, never to the one who broke you. They chose the war, you chose the throne. And when you rule from silence, from discipline, from inner control, they can scream, cry, beg, or provoke, but they'll never reach you again. Because you've transcended the game. You've become a mirror, reflecting only what you allow, and in that mirror, they'll see not who you are, but what they lost. Power is not rage. Power is not revenge. Power is indifference. And indifference, that is the final blow. There's a fatal mistake the weak always make. They strike too soon. Out of emotion, out of panic, out of ego. They lash out the moment they're wounded, and in doing so, they reveal themselves. They expose their intentions. They forfeit power, all for the illusion of control. But if you want to move like a god, if you want your vengeance to echo, you must wait. Because true retaliation is not loud. It is not immediate. It is strategic. It is invisible. And when it comes like fate. In the world of Machiavellian power, timing is everything. A wise man knows when to disappear, when to watch, when to let the wound bleed unnoticed. Not because he's weak, but because he's storing energy. Energy is the most powerful currency in psychological warfare, and nothing drains your energy faster than premature revenge. Let the fools waste theirs on petty outbursts. You conserve it. You observe them. You record every detail. You wait. Imagine this. They think you've forgotten. They think you've moved on. They laugh. They relax. They lower their guard. And then, one day, without warning, you strike. You don't just get revenge. You deliver consequence. Consequences that reshape their world. Silently. Devastatingly. A removed opportunity. A connection they lost and never saw coming. A door that shuts forever. Because you were holding the key all along. That is the Machiavellian art of long-term vengeance. So how do you cultivate this? How do you become the person who waits and wins? It starts with one thing: emotional neutrality. You must stop making decisions based on anger or pain. You must separate your ego from your strategy. Ask yourself, does this retaliation elevate me? Will this move give me advantage or just momentary relief? Can I win more by saying nothing and building my empire in silence? Because power doesn't rush. Power is patient. Power watches the clock and controls it. Here's a principle few can accept. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge. Sometimes it's growth, transformation. Becoming so untouchable, so powerful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. But other times, you must become the storm they never saw coming. And you must strike when they've become overconfident. They've exposed their weaknesses. Your success will be louder than your response. Your enemy must not feel your wrath until it's already too late. This is how you become untouchable. Never let them know you're angry. Anger is a tell. Let them believe they won. That's when they get careless. Plan in silence. Speak only to those who are necessary. Conceal your thoughts behind routine and distance. Build value while they stagnate. While they mock you, you evolve. You grow connections, skill, wealth, peace. That is silent domination. Let your success become the punishment. When they realize they taught you how to live without them, they break. Deliver consequence, not cruelty. Revenge is best served cold, but even better served as justice, masked in opportunity denied. Understand this. You are not a creature of chaos. You are not driven by petty revenge. You are precision. You are discipline. And the day you strike will not be marked by shouting or fire or blood. It will be marked by quiet consequence, by doors that never reopen, by reputations that collapse under your silent withdrawal, by lives that decay because you simply stopped carrying them. They thought they could play with you, that you'd scream, beg, plead, that you'd lash out like a fool. But instead, you disappeared. You rebuilt. You watched. And when the moment was right, you reminded them, you were never the fool. You were the storm waiting in silence. And now, they live under your sky. You've walked the path. You've endured in silence. You've detached from emotion, watched from the shadows, and struck with precision. Now, there is only one step left. To become untouchable. To build the final version of yourself. A being who no longer reacts because nothing can reach you. You do not argue. You do not explain. You do not chase. You are the storm that never announces itself, because your presence alone changes the atmosphere. Machiavelli understood a brutal truth. The most powerful man in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest. It is the one who says nothing, and yet controls everything. This is the throne of silence. It is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is supreme dominance, executed through stillness. Because once people can no longer read you, they begin to fear you. You don't win by being liked. You win by being unreadable. Unreadable men are dangerous. You cannot guilt them. You cannot provoke them. You cannot predict them. And that is what gives them power. So how do you become unreadable? You master these 5 principles. 1. Kill the need to be understood. Most men break because they want others to get them. But the moment you need validation, you expose yourself. Let them misunderstand you. Let them label you cold, arrogant, distant. That misunderstanding is your shield. 2. Detach from reaction. You must never flinch. When insulted, silence. When betrayed, observation. When tested, stillness. Your reaction feeds their control. Your stillness reclaims it. 3. Build a fortress of inner purpose. You are no longer driven by revenge, approval, or even applause. You are driven by mission. A mission so deep, so personal that no distraction can pull you from it. This is how you vanish from the noise and ascend to clarity. 4. Own your presence. You don't speak often, but when you do, your words land like stone. Every room you enter with intention. You walk slower, you speak slower, you observe more. Stillness becomes your signature. 5. Let people feel your absence. Don't always be available. Your power multiplies in absence. Disappearing is not retreat, it's mystique. When you vanish, the world remembers your outline. They wonder where you are, what you're building, why they feel your weight even when you're gone. That's dominance without display. That's quiet rule. You are no longer part of the noise. You are not chasing validation, likes, attention, or vengeance. You are moving like a shadow cast by purpose itself. You've evolved beyond praise, beyond explanation, beyond reaction. And now, you rule from a throne no one can see, but everyone feels. The weak will call you emotionless. The lost will call you cruel. The loud will call you arrogant. Let them. You are none of those things. You are clarity. You are direction. You are stillness in a collapsing world. You don't speak to prove yourself. You don't fight to be seen. You don't demand power. You are power. And from now on, you rule in silence.